Good evening. Hello, everybody. Okay, good evening. I'm Councillor Hickson, the Chair of the Climate Transition Corporate and Environmental Services Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the meeting this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? No? Okay, I ask this so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. So, item 1, apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Cooch, Councillor Jenkins-Baldock and Councillor Parfitt. So are there any substitute members?
Councillor Greenham for Councillor Cooch.
Thank you. Thank you. So item 3, urgent items. There are no urgent items this evening. Item 4, notification of visiting members. I don't see any in the audience. So, item 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? Okay, thank you. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No. So, item 7. So, we consider whether or not items should be taken in private because of a possible disclosure of exempt information. Now, there are some yellow pages attached to your minutes from the 2nd of September. But I move that all items be taken in public unless any member wishes to discuss the items on those yellow pages, then please let me know. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Okay, Jordan.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please just draw everyone's attention to page 4 of your agenda pack? Just want to make a very slight amendment. On the first sentence of page 4, you can see the sentence Recovery Fund were outlined £98,000 for phase 1 and £130,000 for phases 1 to 4. I just wish to alter that to phases 2 to 4. Thank you.
Are there any other comments on the accuracy of the minutes for the 2nd of September?
Oh, sorry, that should have been 2 to 3, sorry.
Okay, therefore I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 2nd of September 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 9. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting held 7th of October? Okay, in which case I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of October 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 10, forward plan. So are there any comments on the forward plan, or do any cabinet members wish to make any comments? So, Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. Obvious, as always, it's a very short forward plan which is presented to us tonight, and it's what's not on it which is perhaps as important as actually what's on it. There seems to be no reference to any forthcoming reports on the 2026-27 medium-term strategy or budget proposals, other than a report, as looking at it on other than on the council tax reduction scheme and fees and charges. I know when Kathy Cox was the cabinet member, she was talking about looking at a 2-year budget strategy, and she did refer to in a number of meetings that she'd want to do work with all the group leaders to be inclusive on the process, and I'm just noting that currently there's no reports planned on the most important decision the council makes, because it's not a decision for the cabinet. The budget is one obviously for the full council.
Thank you, Chair. I can reassure you, Councillor Harper, that although it's not on the forward plan, in January there will be a report coming to this pack with budget proposals and a draft medium-term financial strategy for the next 2 years. And in the same way as happened in previous years, there will be informal consultation with members in December.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments, or does anybody else wish to talk about the forward plan? No? Okay, thank you. So I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. So item 11, this is a reference from full council on Monday the 13th of October. So this notice of motion has been referred to this committee. The committee can debate and express its views on the item that could involve supporting the motion or not supporting the motion or any other action, including rewording the motion. This is going to be introduced by Councillor Jeffrey, the leader of the council.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. You've said all the bits I was going to say in terms of I want to hear your views, ultimately. I think motions like this have two passes through the PAC cabinet system. Firstly, to get the motion to cabinet, and then we ask for a report, and then it comes back through. So I'm expecting a bit of discussion on this over the coming months. This motion does I think set out quite clearly what it wants to do around those practical ideas for embedding the rights of nature within the way we work. It does not refer to legal personhood. That is a separate issue that we can't deal with at this council because it requires primary legislation. So it purely looks at how we acknowledge and how we embed, rather, because we've already acknowledged that nature has rights, how we change the way we work in terms of practical measures. The two that were suggested, I think, at the council meeting were around guardianship and also how we reflect the idea in policy. Shelley, have you got anything to add?
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the committee for any comments or questions. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. I sort of, as with, I think I've said before on this debate about rights of nature, I don't really see the point in approving this or supporting this until you know what it does in terms of policy, because I just think it's sort of like, I wouldn't want to agree to something that then, you supported the rights of nature motion, so that's why we're doing X policy. You need to have these things fleshed out and understood, I think, to support these things and to understand what its practical impact is. I mean, that's something that I would want to see, to understand about whether it's worth supporting or not, because it's all very high level. And I think, actually, maybe you should be doing more practical things, like projects that boost biodiversity and nature, and maybe not so much this sort of higher level. It's sort of like trying to embed things into organisations rather than just coming up with some good projects. I mean, if there's a project that actually we can get behind, I don't know, I won't think off the top of my head, but if there's projects that we can get behind, then put that to councillors and we can think, oh, well, that's good, let's support that, rather than this sort of high level theme of, I don't really just see the point of it, to be honest. And I think it also opens the door to being, what practically does this mean? What practically does it mean? If you find pollution from a farm in a river, what does that mean? What does this council do to that farm, that business, that sort of thing? So it's just sort of I don't like this sort of way of going about policy, but that's sort of my point, really.
to come back on that?
I don't think there's much to say, but thank you for your comments. This is about cultural change, it's about policy change rather than practical projects, which I'm hoping you see we're doing quite a few of. But any more that you want to suggest, please do.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the briefing note, which was the same one I've been given to the council about 3 weeks ago, it just says if the rights of nature motion is passed, officers will begin appropriate process, including the preparation of a full report with recommendations. This will be presented to the Policy Advisory Committee. I just wonder, it's not appearing on our forward plan. So if we don't oppose it tonight, what sort of timescales are we looking at? Because I'm just conscious, as the leader I know points out frequently, that our ability to make decisions moving ahead, we're coming up to the point of local government reorganisation when there may be limitations imposed on us. And also looking at the risk register on page 38, which is the climate-related impacts of climate change and adaptation, which presumably would, to a large extent, tie in with the practical proposals we may wish to do from this motion, that even with all of the mitigation, it doesn't improve the risk. The risk remains one of our highest at Red 16, and that's dependent on Kent County Council cooperating with us on a lot of the proposed mitigation to do with climate change. Well, given the County Council's views, I suspect the risk register, when we come to that, needs to be revised. But it's timescales what my concern is on this.
Yes, so just on the timescales and the forward plan, Cabinet hasn't agreed this motion yet, so we can't put it on the forward plan until we've decided whether we agreed with it. But yes, you're right, it will go on the forward plan, and I absolutely am mindful of the Section 24 notice, which will be heading our way to, in terms of the timescales to do stuff in. But thank you.
Councillor Forecast.
Thank you, Chairman. I think what I'm struggling with is the line having legal rights comparable to those held by an individual. So does that mean we're saying rivers are equal to humans in terms of rights? Because I just can't see how that's true.
Yes, that's the briefing from the officers. I think we're debating the motion itself. There's stuff in there in the officers' briefing I don't agree with as well. I do think having a healthy river is equally as vital to people's health as anyway. So I don't think the two are. You can separate them, but the motion itself is what I'm focused on.
Councillor Cleet. Fantastic. So we've got a proposal and a seconder. So this is to refer it to Cabinet. Okay. Is that agreed? Okay. Okay, so item 12, the quarterly risk update. This is going to be introduced by Councillor Summersgill, who is the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services.
Thank you very much, Chair. My debut in this role. The background to this second quarter risk update is that the updates to our corporate risk register are now being reported as a standalone item in order to ensure due consideration is given to risks. A review of the Council's corporate risks was carried out with the Cabinet and a wider leadership team in May this year, facilitated by consultants Barnett Waddingham, and this resulted in an updated corporate risk register which was reported to this pack in July. The report highlights corporate risks as shown on page 27, broadly unchanged from July. However, we do not feel confident enough to say the risks around local government reorganisation can yet be mitigated, so it scores as 20 both before and after mitigation. The team has held workshops about operational risks with individual service areas, and those held so far are listed on page 24 and have been useful in capturing operational risks, particularly those where ownership is unclear. And local government reorganisation, I mention again, has been identified as a key operational risk for shared services, which is mentioned in page 25. I would ask you to note the risk update, but please send individual comments, and we've already had one on the page, the climate one on page 38.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? So, Councillor Harper.
Yeah, obviously, in addition to the one which the Cabinet member just referred to, which was the KCC in terms of climate change, I noticed on one of the other risks. I scribbled it down 2 seconds ago. Where is it? Yeah, on page 36, which is strategic partnerships failing to deliver value, and again, in the controls is KCC, and I'm just thinking, if we're looking at working with our strategic partners, probably the biggest partner we've got is Kent County Council, and given some of the decisions or lack of decisions coming out of the County Council, I wonder to what extent we consider them a serious strategic partner for us in the run-up to reorganisation in terms of trying to work on any of the priorities of this council. Obviously, climate change, we know they won't do anything on, they don't believe in it, so clearly that risk is going to presumably shoot up from 16 to the highest it possibly can do without Kent County Council willing to take any part in it. Our ability is obviously limited. And again, strategic partnerships, I would have thought, with Kent County Council's sort of policy direction and their view of districts as being a waste of time, how do we seriously think they're going to engage with us in terms of trying to move anything forward in the next couple of years? So again, I wonder if that risk is underestimated as a result of changes in County Hill.
Well, yes, recognising your views of KCC, I would know that in my previous role that the officers in KCC didn't seem to be changing their views in consultation and strategic items, but obviously we've now had the climate emergency rescinded at some level, but as it is coming into notice, I'm not noticing it in the officer level yet, but I do believe I agree with you about the risk in that sense.
Councillor Cleater. Are there any? Oh, Councillor Greenan.
I just wanted to ask, on page 28, the emerging risks and external threats, number 2, NHS system collapse, rising health inequalities. Obviously, it says the potential failure of NHS could increase local authority pressure in areas such as adult social care. adult social care across Kent is under immense pressure already. The target is for somebody to have a care needs assessment within 28 days. That is not happening currently through Kent County Council. Social care staff are changing constantly at the moment, and I just feel that that's not something that's happening in the future. That's something that's happening now, but I don't think we've got that maybe listed in the current detail.
So yeah, it's certainly on that point. If you have a look at the Kent County Council agenda for Thursday, there is a motion exactly on this point, and it all ends in that kind of problem ends in two places. One is A&E, and the other is Trinity House. You know, people run out of money, or they end up very, very ill. The relationship, just to pick up Councillor Cleater's point, and Harper's, I mean, the relationship with KCC is very difficult. She wrote to all 13 other leaders in Kent and called us all shockingly ignorant, and then published the letter publicly. It's not fun working with somebody who's as abusive as that, so hopefully this recording. So yeah, but we are working as best we can with officers, putting pressure from all the districts on to get that collaboration. But yeah, it's a tough call.
Councillor Charles.
I just want to add, I mean, I think for all residents, or for a lot of residents, the future is very scary, and I think that we as a council just have to put out as much positivity as we possibly can. But I agree with Councillor Harper. I think that the disgraceful behaviour that we're witnessing at KCC is going to impact this council, and we must have measures in place to counteract their bizarre way of thinking. So I just hope it doesn't impact the risks that we're looking at now too bad, but I think it will.
Just a plea to councillors here and others in your groups. We are really keen, as Vanessa said, to put out positive stories. That's not just positive stories from the administration, it's positive stories from councillors. If you're doing something good in your ward, talk to the comms team and get them along. The more positivity we can get out there, the better. The comms team works for all councillors, not just the administration.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
Just briefly, looking at page 28 as well on the emerging risks and threats. Number 8, I don't know if that's an order of priority of biggest threats or not. Maybe it's just a list, but utilities resilience for me, I think, is an incredibly important risk that this council should be looking into. The power cuts in Spain, was it earlier this year, they resulted in a lot of people died. The backup generators not working, that sort of thing, and it's just, you know, it's so easy to overlook the importance of electricity, and I think over the coming years that's going to be quite a significant issue, and I just hope the council's looking into it.
Yes, I just want to pass over to Chair to explain how she's taken the risk changes and how the KCC have, over the last 3 months, how that's affected your view of the assigning risks.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. I'll mention about utilities. We are definitely aware that it's becoming a problem, and part of the reason why we've included it in the emerging risks is potentially it could go wider and bigger than it is at the moment. So annually we do run an annual business continuity exercise where we're pulling all the services and create some scenarios for them to work through what would potentially happen. And on Thursday we have one, and the theme for the day is actually power outage and disruption. So what we're going to be doing on the day, and that's part of looking at this risk, is to identify what all the services and departments have currently, what they need to actually make sure that we're better prepared, and how can we support the community more. One of the fallouts of looking at this risk as well was, and I believe last year we sought approval and purchased a backup generator, which is now at the depot, and that is something that will potentially enable us to support and provide a response during a power outage. So definitely we are working on it.
And obviously candles under the sink. Councillor Cleaton.
I think that's a really excellent point. I'll probably be best if I take it forward in my leader role and write formally to my counterpart to see if I get a response. But I can. You're absolutely right. They've lost some significantly experienced people, including Councillor Harwood, and yes, I worked with KRF very closely in my previous role as well, so I know how vital they are, and it has to be done at that kind of level because the problems are not going away, and they're best dealt with at that level. So yes, I'm very happy to write to Lyndon. Perhaps we can compose the letter together.
Thank you. Councillor Harper.
Yeah, I'm just picking up on one of the points Maureen referred to, but also on one of the other items on page 28. I think the impact we need to remember of the COVID pandemic didn't finish when the emergency was brought to an end, or whatever you want to call it. We see it with the impact it's had on the sort of younger generations, people who are secondary school age in particular during the COVID pandemic and who are now at university or slightly older and are now moving into employment, how it's affected their mental health. I mean, and that comes through partly. We see the issue in terms of increasing demands in terms, on welfare because of youngsters' mental health was so adversely affected during the pandemic, yet there hasn't been the investment in the sort of support services to help them get over the impact of it. And that's one of the drivers I think we're finding as a society in terms of, increasing things like welfare, in terms of universal credit and so on. It's because we never invested um, in the sort of mental health support for that generation, and they're just going to move through their lives with never having the support. So the impact won't just go; it will just continue. It will move all the way through. And clearly, when sorry, when they have their own children in years to come, the impact it had on them is likely to be transferred to some extent onto their children. But we know, as Maureen knows, with deprivation, typically it's not a one generation thing. We all know, when I was a councillor elsewhere, and obviously here, we see areas where it gets built in because it becomes generational. And the worry is that, I say this, generation impacted severely by COVID will move through, and it will, to some extent, some of the issues may repeat themselves. And so I think we do need that. That's really where your strategic partnerships with KCC and the health service and everybody else in the care sector and health sector is really important to do what we can do with them to minimise and to try to provide support to that generation. My other point really was on page 28 on number 6, changing demographics. To some extent, I mean, it will be referred to again at tomorrow's policy advisory. My motion in terms of community cohesion, one of the things I think I pointed out at the council meeting was the change in the demographics in Maidstone in the last 10 years. It has been really significant in terms of becoming much more of a diverse community. Go back 10, 15 years, and it was probably one. I mean, I remember when I first worked here, some of the people I worked with at the university thought this was a very white town compared to most places. Yeah, no, more than you're right. It was when I moved here originally. I was quite surprised coming out of London. However, obviously the population demographics have changed and are changing. And in addition to that, we've obviously got the impact of large numbers of, some of the London boroughs having bought up a lot of the old offices in the town centre and converted them into sort of bedsits under permitted development, and the impact that's had because they've transferred on the whole people from their boroughs where they were supported out to Kent, where they don't know anybody, probably don't have a job because their job, if they had one, would have been in London. And so these changing demographics are here, and we know them. And I'm just thinking, talking about becoming clear in the future, I think we can see them. I mean, everybody walks around the town centre in the day. You can see sort of, I was going to say, lost people in a sense, because they've been dumped in Maidstone, no links in Maidstone, and they're probably living in bedsits. So, and it's just that change in demographics, which, there are positives. I mean, becoming much more multicultural. I say one of the things I did a lot of work on in London, in Merton, and I think it's one of the things we've been doing here. And I know the current and the Conservative administration, the current one, picked up in terms of the arts work and addressing diversity. But, and that can be really positive, but it does change the demographics. It changes our service provision necessary. But as I say, the London boroughs moving their social problems out to us also has a massive impact. And I think you referred to things like Trinity House earlier. Kent County Council are withdrawing things like youth services, all that sort of support infrastructure which those people coming here would need more than ever. So again, perhaps Stuart, when you contact the KCC leader, if you could just, try to reinforce those points to her, because at the end of the day, Kent County Council is in charge of social services and welfare budgets and youth budgets, all the relevant services those vulnerable populations being moved into Maidstone and across the whole of Kent need.
Just
picking up on what Councillor Harper said, one of the big issues is people are moved with complex needs. So whilst it's cheaper, what doesn't transfer is the health and social care budget, which has always been a bugbear. And I know this because Councillor Joanna Wilkinson will tell you, someone who works at Albion Place, that people turn up and go, my council's told me you're going to look after me. Well, who are you? You know, we don't know you, we've got no records for you. And I think as well is right, and I think I shall do some writing myself as well, because if London boroughs are going to shift the problem, and it's not the fault of the people who were moved because they don't want to move, then if they come with complex needs, they're going to need to hand over some social care and health budget to manage those needs, because we are failing those people. We as a country, not we as this council, because all we can deal with is, do they need housing benefit? Bromley will pay the earth, because paying the earth in Maidstone is still cheaper than paying Bromley prices, and I know that because I've worked with clients who've been transferred down here. I would suggest maybe London boroughs should look at all the empty properties they have in their boroughs, mainly owned by foreign corporations, and maybe think about compulsory purchasing them, and then they can deal with their housing problems properly and support people properly where they want to live.
I just wonder whether or not our comms team can do more to educate residents. I mean, the amount of times that we get told Maidstone Borough Council are selling to London, and that, you know, we've got to deal with London. You know, and when residents say that to me, I say, if you're selling your house, you can't dictate who I'm going to sell it to. It's not our housing stock. It's, you know, it's on the, you know, publicly available. It's not our properties that are being bought up by London boroughs, and we've got no control. If a London borough or whoever wants to buy a property, it's not within our remit to say you can't do it. And I think if the comms team could do anything to just try and get that message across, because it's a ridiculous message that just keeps being regurgitated.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Councillor Summersgill?
It's just a point to Councillor Cannon's earlier comment about utilities. In my ward, I'm a flood warden next door to Yolding, which 11 years ago flooded. And one of the reasons it was a disaster there was these 3 substations that serve parts of the village. And the one that is attached to people's pumps in the lowest part was the one that flooded first. And UKPN have just agreed to merge the 2 substations and put a new power system in, which they'll do in September 2026. So it's taken 12 years from defining a fault to a national body resolving it. Well, they haven't resolved it yet, but indicating they will. Promised. It's quite difficult to deal with things when you try to explain that to your ward residents. Thank you.
Thank you. So on page 20 of your papers, we are being asked to note the updated risks. So are those risks noted? Yes. Thank you very much. So agenda item, where are we up to? 13. Agenda item 13. So corporate strategy year 1 action plan update. This is again going to be introduced by Councillor Summersgill, the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services. That's what it says.
Okay. I'll pick it up if I may. I mean, it could be either of us, I suppose. So, I mean, I've only been on the council for about 3.5 years, and I hadn't seen this kind of report come to a committee before, so I was kind of keen for it to happen. It says year 1, it's year 1 of our corporate strategy, it's year 2 of the administration. So it kind of, we didn't have a plan last year because we were stuck with the old corporate strategy. We had to change the corporate strategy first, but The plan was agreed at, the corporate strategy was agreed at full council back in February time, and as part of that, the administration defined the action plan itself for this year. So on the papers you've got 9 actions that relate to this committee. There are a total of 35 actions that we're working through. There's narrative there and there's RAG rating there. We're just over halfway through the year, and I'm hoping that it provides some assurance that we are doing the stuff we wanted to do. There's one area that we've paused because we couldn't find anyone to do the cafe in Brenchley Gardens. Other than that, it's pretty much on track.
Thank you. Councillor Cleater.
Just to comment on the one that was paused. Did we not ask that guy who runs the coffee cart in Week Street whether he wanted to have the licence for Brenchley Gardens? Because there was a bit of a hoo-ha, wasn't there? Puddings put a complaint in, even though only he sells his coffee and cold drinks and that. Wouldn't that be logical?
Yes, we did try and find somebody to operate a refreshment facility in Brenchley Gardens, and we offered the opportunity out to the market. We had only one bidder, and that one unfortunately wasn't suitable. But what we are proposing to do for next year, it looks as though it will be difficult to find a suitable commercial operator, but we're looking to the voluntary sector now, and are optimistic that they would be able to provide a facility. But the issue with the commercial operator is that it is right in the middle of town. There's lots of other places offering refreshments, and so you can see why somebody would struggle to make a successful business out of a stall in the Brenchley Gardens.
Sorry, just to come back, that's the point I'm making. We've already got one that operates in Week Street, and could maybe be offered to say so many days in Week Street, so many days, see how it goes. That's the point I'm making. There's already someone with a licence operating a mobile coffee cart, which I think that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about opening a cafe. He runs it with his wife, so commercially. So, I mean, I don't know whether anyone wants to ponder on down Week Street and have a chat with him, but, you know, it just seems to be an ideal solution that you've got someone there. But I will leave that and call it, you know, a day on that one. But if we've got someone, because I know there was an objection to the licence at one point from another provider of him being in Week Street, then surely Brenchley Gardens would be ideal.
Thank you. I would imagine there's a process and it has to go to tender, as Mark suggests. Okay. Councillor Harper?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I agree with you, you need a useful update report for us. Which one is it? Oh yeah, the one on page 47, the Refresh and Deliver the Climate Change and Biodiversity Strategy. Obviously, I remember them being adopted when they came through in, you know, cycles leading up to June 20 of this year. I think the thing is that having had that discussion on our risk register a minute ago, what I think we need to perhaps see at policy advisory, and so we can have a discussion with Cabinet, is actually the implementation of our biodiversity and climate change strategies, especially in light of the County Council's decision to rescind the climate emergency in terms of the whole of Kent. And the areas, the services they're responsible for. Because when those strategies were being written, you know, that was pre the reform period in terms of Kent, the world sort of changed. We've gone through a paradigm shift in terms of our strategic partner for climate change. And I think it would be useful for us at some stage in the next few months with the relevant officer, just to look again at those policies to see whether there's any further tweaking we need to do or redefining, so that we can make sure that in the next 2 years available to us, we can achieve the most possible in terms of climate change and biodiversity, rather than potentially sort of hitting our head on a brick wall against Kent County Council, which may be the impact on certain of the policies. So we just need to, to do that level of work on it. The local government reform thing, it'd be interesting again. I mean, the key first part of it, as Stuart has said to leaders and council, in November there will be the submission sent to the government. I think one of the things we need to keep a good eye on is, again, given the county council's clear attitude as to the level of cooperation there may be if the outcome from the government is to move to unitaries in Kent, which is more than one. Because if the county council doesn't cooperate, local government reorganisation would be about the biggest mess you can imagine. They control the vast bulk of the budget, vast bulk of the staff, vast bulk of the services, and I would think, looking at it, they're unlikely to be particularly cooperative with a 3 or 4 unitary model.
My understanding is that the population of Kent is way too big for one unitary authority. That's why it was rejected by the government from the white paper. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think we can pick up the LGR debate on in a couple of weeks. it'll be an interesting one, but I absolutely concur with your points. And Councillor Kemp-Karen has threatened to withdraw any cooperation if us districts don't behave ourselves, apparently. In terms of the biodiversity strategy, Shelley's gone, sadly. The action was to refresh it, which we've done, but we have done it with the acknowledgement that it is a live document and we will need to expand it. And before, I think, Annie, were you going to say something? Yeah, okay, before I bring Anna in, just a plug, we've got the first electric bin lorry in Kent. Yes.
So I'm no longer responsible for biodiversity and climate change, but traditionally we always have done an annual update on the progress of the strategy. I would imagine that will continue, but I'll pick that up with Shelley. What I will say, acknowledging the live document, from a strategy perspective, I would never recommend we refresh or revisit in that way a strategy midway through a first year. We've got to allow it time to breathe and be delivered. So an update definitely we could bring, but I would never recommend we tinker with it too much, and we've got to give it time to bed in.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No. Okay, so recommendation is on page 41. So to note the progress against actions within the Year 1 action plan. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. So on to item number 14, the asset management plan. This is going to be, is this? Councillor Summersgill. Yeah. Okay, this is going to be introduced by Councillor Summersgill, the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the first formal asset management plan that the Council has put forward, and this is covering a 5-year period. It's good practice for Council to formally document its asset management plan, particularly in the run-up to local government reorganisation. And this document complements the property disposal policy, which the PAC saw in September and was subsequently approved by Cabinet last month. We have an extensive property portfolio, and which covers operational buildings, commercial investments, community assets such as parks and open spaces. So the key principles behind this asset management plan are on page 57. It serves multiple purposes, including enabling the safe operation of council services, generating commercial return, and providing benefits to the community. And it supports the council's corporate strategy adopted earlier this year. This report also details the governance processes behind the asset management plan, which include a role for myself as the relevant cabinet member. I sit on the Corporate Health and Safety Board, but there's also a Corporate Property Programme Board, which produces monthly progress reports, which I used to receive as in my previous role, and I would still receive now, and I believe members of the cabinet see that as well. The report describes the portfolio both in summary on pages 63 to 65 and then in detail in the asset register, which starts on page 69. And we do recognise as a borough that there's particular interest in the council's property holdings in the run-up to LGR. So by publishing the asset register, the council's being transparent about these holdings. And also, if LGR is delayed, we have a 5-year plan to follow. This is why we've done it for that period. And also, with my two parish council hats on, there's a lot of interest in parishes and knowing what's on the asset register as well. While it register provides financial values for the property portfolio, I do recognise this doesn't capture the value of the portfolio for all purposes that it serves. In particular, increasing attention is now focused on natural value for assets that we have, such as trees, waterways, open space, and the property team is considering current methodologies for measuring natural capital, but they're not specified in this stage of the asset management plan. I would hope for you to recommend this eventually to Cabinet for adoption, but I would note that overview and scrutiny will also be assessing this. They've called it in to look at as well.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? And Councillor Harper.
Yeah, I remember when we were looking at the corporate asset plan back in 2017, 2018, because at that time I was the Vice Chair of Policy and Resources Committee. And as part of that work, we commissioned a Gen 2 to review all of our properties, and copies of those reports, which listed all 360 odd properties, were sent out to councillors for them to look through in terms especially of their own wards, to see whether there was any pieces of land they felt potentially could be used for other uses or even disposed of. And that was a very useful piece of work. It took place over about 2 years and led to the council identifying where it could potentially build some additional properties, and also helped illuminate some of the issues and discussions during the local plan at the time. The list of parks here, which we have on page 72, 73, unfortunately misses one of the parks in my own ward. There's only 3 parks in Fountain Oakwood. There's Gatland Lane Recreation Ground, Clare Park, and the one what's not listed here, which is Cornwallis Park, which Stuart will know because it used to be in his own old ward when it was Bridge Ward. And it's fairly prominent when you walk up and down the Tunbridge Road, which is probably one of the 2 or 3 biggest roads into town. So I'm just wondering how complete this list is. If we've missed off Cornwallis Park, where we've listed all our parks and open spaces, are there any other sites we've not listed? Thinking in particular of some of the sort of playground areas we have in various estates, and I can see Maureen nodding. You know, we've got one at Roseholme in my own ward. So I just wonder whether we might, or the Cabinet might want to think about some of the benefits of that previous work in terms of listing items. Because one of the things which did come out from it, which is pertinent throughout the borough, is highway verges. They're not all owned by Kent County Council or Golding Homes. Some highway verges actually are owned by Maidstone Borough Council. And we all know the problems you get with highway verges. And I think it's cognizant on us understanding which bits we own, because they're interspersed with stuff owned by KCC quite typically and Golding Homes. So, as I say, I'd refer the officer and the Cabinet member back, and Mark Green was in charge of the work done in 2017, 2018, so I'm sure he can inform them of some of the benefits of that. My other concern with this, again, is looking on page right, I think it's page 70. Yeah, page 70, where under our operational assets, lo and behold, we go down to the leisure centre. We have a net book value of 20 million, 5-year projected capital investment 2.9 million, 5-year repair and maintenance budget 0. Well, that can't be right, because 3 years ago, as again the director will remember, we had to increase the maintenance budget for Moat Park for the remainder of its economic life by £1 million a year, on top of what it already was, to reflect the fact that it was an ageing building. So that £1 million a year over 5 years is £5 million, in addition to whatever the maintenance budget is of the leisure centre. So to have a 0 implies there's something not quite right, especially when you look at the town hall, where we're spending £232,000 rightly on the town hall, and we're spending £500,000 on our museum. To have 0 for the leisure centre clearly is an admission, or is perhaps looking at something which the council's not aware of in terms of the future of the leisure centre. So those are my points at this stage.
Thank you. I'm going to let you come back. There's just a question sort of related to that I have, which is where the valuations come in, because they seem quite conservative in terms of valuations. I mean, under 7 million for all of the parkland in Maidstone, and loads of properties, including a school and a petrol station, all of that for 1.5 million. So I just want to know where those valuations come from.
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to let Councillor Summersgill come back on those first.
Okay, I'll let you, Katie, speak about the valuations, but the reason there's 0 maintenance on the leisure centre is that maintenance is in Serco's contract, so we are not paying for the maintenance.
So how comes we made a council decision a couple of years ago in the medium and long-term financial strategies to add in an extra £1 million? It was a proposal presented to full council and voted through, recognising the age of the building. I mean, I haven't got the figures today, but I can remember very clearly this £1 million, because it was debated in committee and in full council at the time, as I say, 3 or 4 years ago, that it had to be added in to safeguard the future, and it wasn't in the Serco contract.
I hope I can help you, Councillor Harper, with that. I recall the report that you're referring to, and this came to members when we were extending the Serco contract, and the point that we were making to members then was that investment was required in the leisure centre, and the contract extension, which was agreed by members, involved the council taking responsibility for capital investment, so the improvements that we've seen in the leisure centre over the past couple of years, the council has funded, and in total that was, I don't remember the exact figures, but it was the kind of figure that you're referring to, £1 million a year. But so far as the day-to-day repairs and maintenance are concerned, the running costs of the leisure centre, those are the responsibility of Serco under the contract. Plainly, it makes sense for them, if they're running the building, to do all the run-of-the-mill repairs and maintenance. So we made a distinction between major capital investment, which is included within the 2.9 million, and the day-to-day costs of repairs and maintenance.
Come back very quickly on that, Chair. I understand the point you're saying there, Mark, but if I look on page 68 on the work programme for our capital assets, the leisure centre, and bearing in mind the Serco contract, which you say is so important, which it has got a deadline when it expires, it's been extended to a certain point. We've got leisure centre, evaluate options for the provision of leisure centre assets at the end of the current Serco contract by the end of 2027-28. That's not next year, it's the year after. We've got no plans for what we're doing, yet our contract with Serco will expire the year before Maidstone Council is abolished, and will expire when this shadow unitary authority is in place and decisions on assets such as that will be made by them. So really, we're abdicating our responsibility on the future of a leisure centre in Maidstone. I mean, it's been clear for quite a while that's where we're heading to, but knowing what the government will do in terms of decision making and financial decision making, we're facing a situation where the decisions over our leisure centre will be made not by this council, but will be made by its successor, whilst we are still notionally in post. And I don't think, depending what they may decide on whichever unitary we go into, we're looking at that as a particularly great outcome for our final year. They may either decide to proceed, I don't know, extend Serco more or whatever, but it won't be one which we'll have much involvement with because of the requirements of the process of local government reorganisation will be fully in place during that period.
Councillor Jeffrey.
And again, this is my understanding of the shadow year process. We will still be in charge of this council up to the end of the period to March 2028. We might not be able to make significant new capital investments, but we can carry on the work we're doing. My understanding is, and I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, that the shadow authority won't be able to make decisions about things like the leisure centre during their first year. That shadow year is for them to set themselves up and to take over. And of course, once they take over, it will be a political decision for the new administration rather than for us. I'm also quite conscious that the leisure centre as it is in quite a good state, far better than it was a few years ago. And we do have a plan within the work plan for the asset management to come up with a view of what happens beyond that. Whether or not the new administration overturns that plan or not is a political choice. And you know, hopefully we'll all be elected to the new unitary authority and carry on the good work we're doing. But that's a political decision for residents.
Thank you. Mark, have you got an answer on where those valuations come from, please?
I don't really have anything to add to what the leader has said. The date of 27/28 is linked to local government reorganisation because we want to be able to say what is needed when the Serco contract comes to an end, but the Serco contract extends beyond the end of this council, assuming that this council transfers it to a new authority in March 28. So it would be premature for this council to be doing major works, but we can at least explore what the options are and have a plan which, as the leader has said, it will be up to the new authority to implement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification. Wallace Avenue petrol filling station? You mean the one that's on Sutton Road? Right, thank you. That'll give us more power when he applies for another 24-hour licence to do alcohol. And 111 Tunbridge Road isn't a care home, it's an NHS facility. KMPT, just for clarification.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, so the recommendation on page 51. So, firstly, that the attached draft asset management plan 25 to 26 to 29-30 be adopted. And secondly, the rolling annual update to the plan be received by the Policy Advisory Committee and Cabinet from now on. Is that agreed? Thank you very much.
And can I just say well done, us, at least we know where our assets are, more or less, unlike other places.
Okay, so that was the last item on the agenda, so I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everybody.